It takes 10 to 15 years of focused work to make it as a screenwriter. I wish it didn't, but it does. And I have a premise that most aspiring writers like you want to get there faster and easier, and you're always looking for shortcuts and hacks and information that's boiled down. And you're right, and that there are some dials you can turn to help you shorten your time frame for finding success faster and easier. And they fall under skills or experience. And if you're increasing your skills and your experience, you're moving where you want to go. And the faster, easier you can increase skills and experience, the better off you are. So here are the dials you can turn. In the skills category, you have learning, practicing, and finishing screenplays. And in the experience category, you have time and focus, feedback, and honing the process. And I'm going to pull these apart here in a second, but you also need to understand one more thing. There is a big dial surrounding these, an attitude. And if you aren't cultivating that one, if you aren't turning it up, even if you turn up all the others, you'll never find the success that you're looking for. So I'll get to that one in a bit. Let's start with the skills category and learning. And by watching this video, you're activating this dial. You've probably read a book or two, or several. You probably watch other YouTube videos or other content elsewhere. You're hopefully watching actual content, TVs, movies, and studying it, breaking it down. You're probably reading screenplays. And all of those things are great and necessary and important to do. But these are the baseline. I mean, those things are the dial at a 1 or a 2, not at an 8 or a 9 or a 10. Now the benefit is these are generally free or relatively inexpensive. There are a few downsides though, and one of the main ones is the time it takes you to learn. These basics, while important and necessary, if that's all you're doing, these things I just mentioned, if that's all you're doing, your dial is always set at a 1 or a 2, and you're not going to get to where you want to go faster. So how do you turn this dial up? Well, here's a few things. Take an in-person or an online writing class. Join a writer's group. Engage in conversations about film and TV with others, even if those are informal conversations. Go to school and get a degree. Study how story works. Find a mentor or a coach or a teacher who's interested in you finding success. And I know some of you are all like, okay, but some of those things, those cost money. And you're right, some do, and some are much more expensive than others. And that's because in the cases of classes or college, or even having a coach, you're paying for their expertise and their time. And just think about this for a second. The craft of screenwriting and learning any craft is very similar to athletes performing at a professional level. Professional teams have coaches. Professional athletes have coaches and trainers and support staff. They have people who analyze their performance and who help them modify what they're doing to improve faster. And yes, they may have started with some natural talent, and some start with a lot of natural talent. But most athletes cultivate their craft, their sport, because they turn the dial of learning way up by surrounding themselves with people who help. In fact, it's expected that if you're going to compete at a professional level as an athlete, you have to have a coach or several coaches to help you get there. But for whatever reason, that's not the expectation when it comes to writing. Most aspiring writers think they can do it on their own, and to an extent you can, but it's keeping the dial set at 1 or a 2, and it's just going to take you much longer to get to where you want to go. So consider turning this dial up. Even if you turn it up a little, it's going to help you get there much faster. And yes, I do have some resources to help with this on this front. They're resources that I wish I would have had when I was learning. And if you're interested, I can help you like I've helped others. But if you choose to not turn this dial up, that's cool. Keep moving at the pace you're moving. But I will tell you, this one dial, more than any other dial that I'm going to mention, will have the greatest result in your overall writing trajectory if you turn it up. Dial number 2, practicing. Now this one's pretty simple, so it'll be short, but the more you practice, the better you get. I mean, that's pretty much true with everything. Remember the athlete example? They practice a lot more than they play or perform. And the reason you practice is not to just get good at a specific skill, but to be able to do it without having to think about it, because it becomes part of your muscle memory. So, for example, one of the things that can really help a scene is to consider the power dynamics at play between two characters. One comes into the scene with power and the other doesn't. And at some point in the scene, maybe that power shifts to the other person or solidifies. And you can practice writing scenes where the power shifts or where the person with the power when the scene starts gets even more power as the scene progresses. And you can think about the power dynamics while you're practicing. But then, when you're writing a screenplay, you don't even have to think about it. You just start doing it naturally. And then, you don't even think about it naturally while you're writing. You begin to think about it naturally while you're planning out the story, and it's only in the outline stage. So practicing helps you be able to do things out of muscle memory instead of having to think about them while you're doing it, and it frees you to just be able to write. My guess, though, is that most of you are not practicing. You're working on a screenplay you want to sell or win a contest or whatever, and so you're practicing that way, but you aren't just writing scenes or practicing on its own. In this case, your dial is actually set at a 1 or a 2. And this is why the learning dial is so important. If you're taking classes, whether online or in person, working with a coach or a mentor, and you're practicing, okay, now your dial is turned up because you turned it up in the learning and now you've turned it up in the practicing. The last skill I'll mention before we get into the experience category is the skill of writing screenplays. Not one screenplay, screenplays, plural. If you want a number, it's typically somewhere in the 5 to 10 range, although the number of screenplays isn't as important as the quality of those screenplays. But if you aren't learning, and if you aren't practicing, so those dials on those things are down at 1 or 2, then you're going to have to write more screenplays. You're going to have to turn this one way up. And the reason is you're going to need to have more opportunities to learn and to practice the skills you need to succeed as a screenwriter. So the more you learn, the more you practice, the fewer scripts you're going to have to write. So if you aren't turning the dials up on learning or on practicing, you're going to have to turn this one up a lot. If you're doing the others, you'll be in better shape. But again, it's not one screenplay. It's multiple. If you're an aspiring screenwriter, you are wanting some type of consistency, and producers, managers, and agents will ask you, what else do you have? And if you only have one screenplay, they know you aren't serious about being a screenwriter. So turn the style up. Preferably, you turn up all 3 in the skills category. And if you do that, you will begin to expand your skills as a screenwriter much faster. But now, you need some experience. So what are the experience dials? The first one is time and focus. And I feel like this one is kind of self-explanatory because the more time and the more focus you have, the more you turn up this dial and the faster you're going to get to where you want to go. More time is more experience, more focus allows for faster processing, part of how our brains work. So someone who works consistently and focused for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, is turning the dial up higher than someone who just works for 2.5 hours 1 day a week. It's the same amount of time, but not the same amount of focus. And you need both time and focus. So figure out some consistent time to work and make sure you're focused and fully invested when you're writing. Not checking email, or responding to texts, or watching some show passively in the background. Focus and time. And it increases your experience. The next experience style is feedback. In short, you need some. And not from your BFF or your mom, from people in the industry, from people who know what's what. If you've joined a writer's group as part of your learning, they will be your first readers. Listen to their experience with your script. You'll begin to learn how to take notes and listen for the note behind the note. Then maybe move on to some basic coverage. Maybe it's associated with a contest or just a screenplay coverage service. Get feedback on what's working and what isn't. Maybe do a script consultation, have someone go through your script with you in a conversation. And yes, I do this too if you want to work with me, but talking with someone about what is and isn't working can be super helpful. And unlike coverage, which is typically just a written report, I don't do that, a consultation is a conversation. You can ask questions and clarify and get the feedback that you need. So if you aren't getting feedback, or if you're getting minimal feedback, this dial is still turned way down. And again, you don't have to turn any of these dials up. Okay, you can keep them all at the low 1 or 2 settings and take 10 to 15 years to get to where you want to go. Or you need to start tweaking these dials in ways that make sense for you and your situation. Everybody's different. The last experience dial I'll mention, and then we'll talk about that big kahuna dial that you have to turn, is the experience dial of honing the process of writing a screenplay. Now, contrary to popular belief, writing screenplays is hard. Writing good ones is especially hard. And what you have to learn is how to navigate the process of writing a screenplay so you can do it fast and efficiently. And more importantly, you can drop in at any point of the process and move a script forward. So let's say you have a written screenplay and it's getting some traction and getting passed around town. You have a few meetings as a result, and someone now wants to hire you to write a different script, which is often how screenwriting careers start. And they give you a 5-page treatment or something like that, and this is something that they like, and they want to see an outline in 4 weeks from you. Could you do it? Do you even know what a treatment is? Or do you even write outlines when you're writing your screenplays? I mean, what if they give you a first draft of a completed script along with some notes, and now they want a treatment? Well, could you do that? You have to learn to maneuver through the process of writing a screenplay. And the only way you can do this is to practice different strategies to write more than one screenplay and to learn the skills for being able to write any type of script or scene. And the better you are at the process of writing, the better off you are as a writer, because now if someone asks you to write a draft of a script in 10 or 12 weeks based off of an outline that they give you, you could. But the big dial, the one that even if you turn up all the others that I've mentioned, you turn them all way up, this one can hobble you and make that 10 to 15 years turn into 20 or 30 years. And that's the dial of you need to turn up becoming a lifelong learner. No professional screenwriter I know thinks they know everything about writing or the business of screenwriting. In fact, the business of screenwriting is constantly changing. And if you aren't continually learning about the shifts and the trends, you are left behind so fast. And if you think you know how to write everything, that you can write whatever you want, you've taken this dial and you've essentially turned it to zero, proclaiming you don't need to learn. And no one in Hollywood wants to work with people like that. Hollywood wants people who are willing to learn, who want to be innovative, who want to push themselves and become better than they are, who want to push other people to become better, to work collaboratively so everyone's best skills and experiences are being brought to bear. You want to cultivate an attitude of being a lifelong learner. And even though I've got this channel, even though I've made money as a screenwriter, even though I've got a book on story and how stories work, even though I have an online class and consulting and coaching, I don't know everything. I'm constantly learning, trying to rethink and to learn new things. And when I write new scripts, I try to challenge myself to write something better or different than what I've done before. And I'm generally one of the more curious people in any room I walk into. I want to know how things work. I want to know what people do for a living. I want to know how they got there, what makes them tick, what are their fears and hopes and dreams. I want to learn about them. And nearly every professional writer I know is like this. Yes, there are a few who have egos the size of Texas, but most are just confident and know what they're good at and what they need to learn. And they're trying to learn. So have the attitude of someone who is a lifelong learner. Turn this dial way up. It will serve you in whatever you do, but especially in screenwriting. And if you just want to continue learning, consider watching this. Thank you for watching. Fun buttons and links below. Comments are even better. Find success faster by turning up these dials. And when you tell a story that matters. See you later.